Sunday, and the day dawns misty and distinctly autumnal for our last full day on the Lancaster Canal. The crossing was a special one, organised by CRT because the canal had run short of water and then had to cancel our previous crossing. So we all gathered at the top of the Ribble link proper by the staircase lock. Half a dozen boats ready to reverse down the staircase to begin our journey down the locks until we reached the pound between the last two locks. Here we were due to spend the night, and a couple of our number were anxious to get ahead because their teams were playing that afternoon. The following morning we set off along the muddy ditch leading to the sea gate, with reeds brushing both sides of the boat. Once again we paused until the tide reached sufficient levels for the sea gate to be lowered, and then we were off down Savick Brook, following the narrow muddy channel that took us onto the Ribble estuary proper. A cautious right turn to avoid the sandbank, and the boats were fighting the incoming tide as they headed out towards Morecambe Bay. Blackberry Way was functioning perfectly, the engine thrumming beneath us as other boats jostled for position, and we were perfectly content as we made the turn around Asland Lamp. But shortly afterwards, disaster was to strike. Suddenly the engine faltered and died. Our first reaction was to throw out our anchor, and thankfully it bit into the muddy riverbed. We told other boaters what had happened as they came past, and thankfully Steve Hayward and Moira, his partner, turned and brought Justice alongside. Soon we were breasted up, the anchor was lifted, and I'm afraid there are no pictures of that process. I was a bit busy. By this time the tide had turned. We were fighting the water flowing out of the river as two heavy boats were pushed by one ancient engine up towards Tarleton Lock. As the river narrowed, the flow became faster and the boats became slower. The banks seemed to just creep past. Steve Hayward attempted to coax a bit more out of his engine, but as soon as he did so, it began smoking, so we had to settle for that slow pace. Finally, the lock came into view in the distance. We were getting instructions from Harry Mayer that we must keep to the left-hand side and let the flow carry us into the mouth of the lock. Closer and closer we crept. Steve went down to the engine room to put a bit more speed on the engine for that last few yards. Moira concentrated fiercely as she steered towards the lock. We crept, we crossed the flow, we entered the gates, and there was an enormous sigh of relief as we eased into the lock, hardly touching the sides. Okay, you're in.
Watch your head! Watch your head and slow down! I've done into neutral. Yeah, well done. Well done. Terrifically done. I was sort of trying to give you a little bit of speed when I could see them all approaching.
Wonderful. We met a happy crowd, but the drama wasn't to end there. The lock gates wouldn't close, and attempts to grab whatever was blocking them with a long rake, failed completely. Eventually, another boater jumped down to help. Steve Hall, who moors at Tarleton, waded in and hauled out a piece of wood, ancient and rotten, that had been holding the gate open. Pete, off another boat that had crossed with us, jamming, had already sorted out the engine problem. It was simply a loose connection. So we were floated, we rose up in the lock, and we headed off for Rufford and a well-earned drink. We'd had a dramatic day, but thanks to no fewer than 3 different sets of boaters, we'd been rescued, we'd had our engine fixed, and we'd sorted the lock out. Just shows what boaters can do when they work together.